judge himself told everyone this should have never happened. I walked in with wrist and ankle cuffs and walked out vindicated.
She stood by him through a nationally televised lawsuit, through years of legal battles, and through the moment he filmed a video from behind jail walls. But 5 months after David "Heavy D" Sparks walked out of 3 days in solitary confinement, his wife Ashley Sparks quietly walked into a Utah courthouse and filed for divorce. No public statement, just paperwork and silence. The couple had been together for nearly 16 years. They met at church, built a family, raised 3 kids, and appeared to weather every storm the Diesel Brothers brand threw their way. So what actually happened? And what did Ashley finally say about it all? Let's get into it. She filed, and nobody saw it coming. On March 10, 2026, Ashley Sparks filed for divorce from David "Heavy D" Sparks in a Utah court. The filing was quiet. No reason was listed. No joint statement was released. No rep issued a response. The documents were lean, just the legal basics. But the timing? That told a different story entirely. What made this filing land differently from the average celebrity split wasn't just who filed, or that there was no explanation attached to it. It was the contrast. 5 months earlier, David had been all over social media, posting a 30-minute video defending himself after being hauled to jail. He was loud, passionate, and fighting.
I post on Facebook, so I must get paid by Facebook. And he wanted to get access to that money that they were paying me, which they weren't.
Ashley, meanwhile, had stayed out of it entirely. She hadn't commented on the arrest. She hadn't posted about the legal chaos. She had gone quiet in a way that, looking back now, might have been telling. Ashley has a following of her own, around 177,000 people on Instagram, and she had regularly shared family moments, honest reflections on marriage, and glimpses of life behind the Diesel Brothers brand. But somewhere in the stretch between his October arrest and her March filing, that sharing slowed down. Nobody expected the divorce filing. Fans who followed the family closely described it as coming out of nowhere. The couple had been married since August 2010. Before that, they had dated for 2 years after meeting at a church in Utah in 2008. By the time the filing hit the news, they had been together for the better part of 16 years. 3 children, 1 shared public identity, and now, court documents. What those documents don't tell us, the why, the when things actually shifted, what the last straw may have been, is exactly what has kept people talking. Who Ashley Sparks actually is, and what she said about the marriage. Ashley Sparks was never a background figure in the Diesel Brothers world, even if she wasn't always front and center. She built her own audience independently of the show, keeping her Instagram page filled with family content, personal reflections, and the kind of candid writing that felt more honest than most reality TV-adjacent accounts. In August 2021, when the couple hit their 11th wedding anniversary, Ashley posted something that got a lot of attention at the time, and reads very differently now. She wrote that she used to say she loved everything about David, until one day she caught herself saying it out of habit, laughed, and took it back. She called it refreshing to realize that nobody is perfect, and no marriage is perfect. She said they had been through ups and downs, their fair share of both, and that the key was choosing to focus on the good. It was warm, it was honest, and it was clearly written by someone who had been in a long marriage long enough to know that the version of love that sustains you isn't the same one that starts you out. She also talked about how she and David both had quirks the other didn't enjoy. She didn't sugarcoat it. She framed it plainly. No 2 people love every single thing about each other, and that's fine. What matters is effort and where you put your focus. That post is worth sitting with, because it's one of the last times Ashley opened up publicly about the state of their relationship, and it was written during a period that, from the outside, looked relatively calm. The show had wrapped. The family was settled in Utah. David was still building the brand. The legal battles were ongoing, but hadn't yet escalated to arrests. What she said in 2021 was essentially that their marriage was real, not curated, not perfect, but real and worth it. The question is, what changed in the years between that anniversary post and the morning she drove to the courthouse? The arrest that changed everything's trajectory. To understand the timeline of this divorce, you have to understand what October 2025 actually looked like for this family. On October 7, 2025, U.S. Marshals arrested David Sparks and booked him into Salt Lake County Jail. He was 40 years old. The arrest was civil, not criminal, stemming from a contempt of court order tied to a nearly decade-long legal battle with Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, a nonprofit that had sued the Diesel brothers back in 2017. The original lawsuit alleged that David, along with co-defendants including Joshua Stewart and 2 affiliated companies, had illegally removed pollution control equipment from diesel trucks.
The Diesel brothers say before the 4 long years of this lawsuit even started, they were already making changes to their diesel trucks,
modifying them to roll coal, the practice of producing thick black exhaust, and then sold those trucks and parts as part of their television brand. In 2020, a federal judge found them liable and ordered payment of more than $851,000 in civil penalties and legal fees. David didn't pay, not in full, not over the next several years. And in the summer of 2025, things escalated sharply. He was found in contempt of court in June 2024 for the first time. Then again, in August 2025, this time for transferring property in a way the court said violated the first contempt order. After finding that David had also failed to provide required financial disclosures to the plaintiffs, a federal judge issued a bench warrant for his arrest on October 2nd. 5 days later, the marshals showed up. David spent roughly 2.5 days in solitary confinement at Salt Lake County Jail, 23 hours a day, alone in a cell. He was eventually released after a stipulation was reached during a court hearing in which he agreed to provide the required disclosures within 10 days. The moment he got out, he posted a video. It ran 30 minutes. He was composed but raw, and he was very specific about what he wanted people to understand. He hadn't been charged with a crime. No crime had been alleged. This was a civil paperwork dispute, he said, that had been weaponized by lawyers who had turned environmental statutes into a personal revenue stream. He talked about his longtime accountant, Christy Van Mering, who had passed away unexpectedly in December 2024, taking with her the passwords and access to key financial records his attorneys needed to satisfy the court's disclosure demands. He said his team had invited the plaintiffs to their office, their shop, even his home and his cabin, to look at everything in person, and they refused. He described spending those days in solitary as the most miserable experience of his life. He said 2 days was enough to give him a new respect for anyone who had ever served real time. What he didn't talk about, not in that video, not in the coverage around it, was Ashley. She was entirely absent from the public narrative around the arrest, and she said nothing publicly herself. The legal machine that quietly dismantled the Diesel brothers' empire. Most people who followed the Diesel brothers thought of the 2017 lawsuit as background noise, a thing that was happening in the legal system while the show kept going and the brand kept growing. What the timeline actually shows is something much more corrosive. The original suit was filed in 2017 by Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, which argued that trucks sold and modified by the Diesel brothers emitted 30 to 40 times more pollution than stock diesel vehicles. Their attorney argued that it only takes 2 to 3% of vehicles like these to effectively double emissions across an entire regional fleet. making it, in their view, a genuine public health issue. In 2020, Judge Robert Shelby sided with the plaintiffs. David and his co-defendants were fined more than $850,000 combined, ordered to permanently stop tampering with emission systems, and banned from owning or selling vehicles with inoperable emissions controls. The defendants appealed. In December 2021, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld most of the ruling, and notably used the phrase flagrant misconduct in its assessment of the Diesel brothers' conduct. The court did, however, order Judge Shelby to recalculate the fine to remove penalties tied to trucks sold outside of Utah. After that recalculation, the attorney fee figure landed at $843,000. On top of that, a March 2021 ruling had separately ordered David and co-defendant Joshua Stewart to pay $928,000 in additional legal fees to the plaintiffs, bringing the total exposure into the millions. David never paid. His position, as he stated publicly, was that the amount was wildly inflated. He pointed out that the EPA itself had declined to take the original case because the scale was too small to prioritize. He said 20 trucks and 164 parts were being treated as if they caused over $114 million in damage, roughly $5 million per vehicle, many of which were show trucks or off-road-only builds. From the plaintiff's side, none of that math changed the underlying legal reality. Court records from 2016 through 2018 showed that David earned $482,000 directly from his Discovery Channel partnership alone during that period. Trucks from his operation sold for $1,500 each. Judge Shelby also noted on record that the show had featured David's helicopter, 2 planes, and a 7,500-square-foot mansion that was under construction at the time. The argument that he couldn't pay was one the court explicitly rejected. By 2025, the situation had reached a breaking point. David was found in contempt twice. He was found to have transferred property in violation of a court order. His accountant had died and taken critical financial access with her. A federal judge, by the court's own language, stated that it had exhausted all other mechanisms to ensure compliance before ordering his arrest. Meanwhile, the Discovery Channel show had ended in 2020. The YouTube channel remained active, but the business infrastructure was under intense court scrutiny, including a liquidation sale at Sparks Motors that a federal judge briefly blocked in August 2025 before allowing it to proceed under specific conditions. The allocation of those sale proceeds immediately became another point of legal contention. For a family whose identity had been so deeply tied to the brand, this wasn't just legal noise. It was the sustained unraveling of a business, a public image, and a financial foundation, all at once, across years. What Ashley's silence actually revealed. Ashley Sparks never posted about the arrest. She never weighed in on the lawsuit. She didn't share a support message after David's jail video. She didn't repost it. She didn't respond to any of the public commentary. And then, 5 months after the arrest, she filed for divorce. That silence is, in many ways, the statement. In the years when things were more stable, Ashley was the one who spoke openly about their marriage. She was the one who acknowledged the hard parts without dramatizing them. She was the one who framed long-term partnership as a choice you keep making, not a feeling you're permanently guaranteed. She also wrote, in that same 2021 anniversary post, that when you focus on the downs, you tend to get more downs, and that focusing on the ups makes it easier to survive the difficult stretches when they come. It read at the time like the kind of hard-won wisdom you pick up from years of actual marriage. Looking back, it sounds like someone who had already been tested. The divorce filing listed no reason. Under Utah law, couples can file citing irreconcilable differences without getting into specifics, and that appears to be the route Ashley took. David's representatives had not issued a public statement as of the time of the filing. The Sparks household did not immediately respond to media inquiries. David himself had been posting actively on Instagram in the weeks leading up to March 10th, continuing to build the advocacy narrative around his arrest, talking about legal reform, staying publicly visible. The contrast between his activity and her silence was striking, but the filing itself, the action of it, the fact that she was the one who initiated it, and the timing relative to everything that had happened in the months before, communicated something that words might have taken much longer to say. 15 years of marriage, 3 children, daughter Charlie Mae and sons Bo and Mac. A life built inside a brand that was now going through federal courts on a near-continuous basis. At some point, it appears Ashley made a decision that the relationship could no longer absorb what was happening around it, or within it. Whether the arrest was the breaking point, or simply the moment that confirmed a direction that had already been forming, isn't something the public record answers. What it does show is that she waited, watched, and stayed quiet through the loudest chapter of David's legal crisis, and then she moved. The filing was the silence breaking, just not in the way anyone expected. Where things stand now, and what it means for the Diesel brothers' name. The divorce is still in its early stages. No custody arrangement has been publicly announced. No financial settlement details have emerged. And as of now, neither David nor Ashley has released a formal statement about the split beyond what the court documents reflect. What makes this moment feel significant to people who've followed the Diesel brothers from the beginning is what it represents in the broader arc of the brand. David Heavy D Sparks and David Diesel Dave. Kylie started out making YouTube videos in Utah, building custom trucks, giving them away, building an audience on chaos and personality and big diesel energy. Jay Leno noticed them, brought them onto his show, and Discovery Channel came calling. Diesel Brothers premiered in January 2016 and ran for 7 seasons, ending in 2020. From there, the brand continued online, with David's YouTube channel growing to more than 4.4 million subscribers. That online audience became the foundation of everything that came after the show. Collaborations with Whistlin' Diesel and Matt's Off-Road Recovery kept David visible in the diesel community. A partnership with Ram at the Roadkill Nights event in Michigan as recently as August 2025 showed the brand still had commercial appeal even while the legal situation was deteriorating. But brands built on personality are also deeply tied to the personal lives behind them. And when the personal life fractures publicly, an arrest, a divorce, a sustained legal battle, the audience doesn't just watch the trucks anymore, they watch the person. The Diesel Brothers brand was never just about trucks. It was built on the image of a guy who was larger than life, genuinely happy, and surrounded by family. That image sold merchandise, attracted sponsors, and kept millions of people subscribed. Once cracks appear in the personal story, the brand math changes too. David has framed his post-arrest mission as advocacy. In his Instagram video, he was specific about what he believed was happening, that lawyers had learned to twist environmental statutes into what he called personal profit machines, and that, without pushback, the same playbook would keep getting used on other small businesses across Utah. He mentioned that the attorneys for the plaintiffs had already pursued more than 20 other companies and individuals in the state using similar tactics. He said his lawyer had presented the court with roughly 40 slides of evidence laying out what he described as years of the other side misleading the court. He vowed to keep working and said he was more motivated than ever. The language he used was forward-looking, even defiant. What that future looks like now, without the marriage that had been part of the Diesel brothers' story from nearly the beginning, is something he hasn't addressed. His estimated net worth sits around $2 million, down considerably from what the brand's peak might have suggested. The legal fees alone from this decade-long case have run into the hundreds of thousands. And the divorce proceedings will now add another layer of financial and legal complexity to an already complicated picture. 15 years, 3 kids, 1 courthouse filing, and no explanation offered to anyone. What happens next for the Sparks family will play out in private, the way Ashley has always handled the hard parts, quietly and entirely on her own terms. Some people will look at Ashley's timeline: 16 years, 3 kids, a marriage that survived a nationally televised lawsuit, appeals court, and years of financial pressure, and see a woman who held on longer than most people would have. Others will look at the fact that she filed 5 months after the arrest, while David was still publicly fighting the biggest battle of his career, and see someone who chose the quietest possible moment to walk away. Which version feels true to you? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.